So the point is, no models predicted this. And that's because we've never seen this level of energy stored in the oceans before. And the model training has never really accounted for this sort of extreme condition. This extreme condition, obviously, is what some folks are arguing is becoming more frequent. So it brings into question, this ability for us to actually forecast the rise in the temperature over time is driving this. And then from an economic perspective, this is one of the key points I wanted to make. When an event like this happens, there's a market called the reinsurance market. And the reinsurance market sets the price for covering insurance companies against a big loss where you can lose a ton of stuff at once. Insurance companies like to write insurance policies, like car insurance is a great business because there's never one big event that causes everyone to get in an accident on the same day. But with property insurance, a hurricane can cause everyone to lose on the same day. So insurance companies need to buy reinsurance. And then there's these big reinsurance companies and they have pools of capital and there's capital markets involved and bonds that are sold to protect reinsurance. So there's, hundreds of billions of dollars, $1 trillion plus in reinsurance. When an event like this happens, those reinsurance markets take a loss. And the loss causes them to raise rates significantly. And when that happens, the reinsurance markets harden, is what they say. And then rates go up next year for reinsurance. And then the insurance companies pass those rates on to consumers and to property developers and to the people that have mortgages. And the more of these events happen, even though it just happened in Acapulco, it impacts insurance rates everywhere. So as we see the events like what happened in Maui, what happened in Acapulco, what happened in Miami, you can start to see more of these things start to happen at the same time. The cost for insuring property goes up. And that starts to make this whole system very difficult to maintain because if the cost for insurance doubles or triples and people can't really afford it, but the mortgages require that they have it in all of these high-risk coastal cities and coastal areas, that's where an economic hit either has to be absorbed by the federal government or we end up taking a
insurance, right?
Or we take a massive economic loss. And so I just want to say, this seems like an outlier event, and oh my gosh, we should be sorry and sad. But the truth is, the frequency of these events and the risk factors, which is this ocean heat temperature rising continuously for a long period of time, are going to drive that frequency of events. And there's going to be a real economic cost to bear on the order of several $1 trillion over time, because someone has to underwrite that real estate and someone has to underwrite the insurance to support that real estate. So it may seem like a one-off and, this won't be a big deal, but it actually translates economically through the reinsurance and insurance markets into the real estate markets fairly quickly. And so I just wanted to kind of point out one of the second-order consequences of this sort of an event.
There was an article in the Wall Street Journal a few weeks ago, Nick, you can probably find it, about this exact issue where they profiled a handful of homeowners. I think it was in Palm Beach or West Palm Beach. And they essentially had to sell and leave because they couldn't afford the home insurance. Or for those that owned their home outright, they just stopped insuring it because they realized the land value would be fine. And so they said, if a storm, there it is, if a storm hits,
there you go. Yeah.
If a storm hits, West Palm and destroys my home, hopefully I'll be fine. And then I'll just leave and I'll just sell it for the dirt. But to your point, it's become economically untenable in a lot of places for these folks to be able to insure their home. Look at this on this example, $121,000 a year for home insurance.
What? How's that possible?
By the way, so add up the value. Well, that's because there's a 1 in 10 chance that a hurricane's going to hit them on any given year, right? And then they lose their whole value. So do the math on what the total real estate value in that region is, and think about what it gets written down to as everyone starts to sell. And then you do that across all these regions where there's now high risk and lack of insurance available. And you have a real economic question on who's going to step in to support and buoy those asset values.
Now, but aren't there state actors now that step in and act as a reinsurer?
Great question. In Florida, they have a reinsurance pool that is largely assumed to be completely underfunded. And so everyone says, Florida's got this reinsurance pool, they'll write your stuff. But the Florida, if you ask people in the reinsurance industry, they're like, this thing's basically bankrupt. It's completely insolvent. This isn't real. So the federal government's going to be asked to step in and cover that thing at some point. And then someone's got to write $1 trillion check. I mean, you want to complain about sending $100 billion to Ukraine and Israel. Wait until most of the country has to underwrite coastal communities' real estate values.